answer. Whether this government lasts another day, another month, or the rest of the term, every day will be used to deliver change to the people of our city. We explore ideas beyond the scripts of our own individual manifestos. We do this because this is what the people of our city wanted. For no single party to believe that they will be able to rule arrogantly under our people. The result of this has been a better government. The result of this has been a cleaner government. A government more connected to its people, more accountable to this legislature. Today, I'm proud to say that change has taken root in our city. For the first time in a long time.
Councillor Tomo, Mr. Mayor, just give me a moment. Councillor Tomo, if you would stop shouting. Yes. Please stop shouting and howling. Mr. Mayor, please continue. Thank you. No. No. Stop. Please continue, Mr. Mayor.
For the first time in a long time, this city is moving forward in the right direction. Let me be clear. Let me be clear. We do not delude ourselves or operate the government from a fantasy world. Our reality is not different from the lived realities of our residents. We know that the cold truth is that we have a long way to go. Our inherited service delivery backlogs within the city are staggering. They are a product of years and years of neglect, and they manifest in the daily service delivery issues that plague our communities. The 100,000 potholes in our city arise from a shocking 11.8 billion rands backlog in our road network. In 2017, over 3,900 kilometers of our roads had fallen into the classification of poor or very poor conditions. This is the equivalent length of road that would take someone from Johannesburg to Nairobi. This has been made worse by 56 billion rands backlog in stormwater drainage that results in the increasing structural decline of our roads. This is also seen in the flooding of our communities, including some parts of Soweto. No stormwater drainage has ever been installed. 78% of our 900 bridges in the city are classified as being either poor or very poor condition. 6.5 billion rands is required to address this. Our electrical network is no better. Over 27% of our bulk transformers now operate beyond their useful lifespan, ranging between 48 and 91 years old. That is right. Some of these transformers, for your information, were built in 1927. Our electrical infrastructure backlog sits at a staggering 17 billion rands. This is experienced by residents suffering 170,000 low voltage outages in this financial year alone. Our water network can be likened to the cartoon character with the fingers and toes plugging the leaks of a ship. Available data from 2016-17 here shows that the water network suffered 45,000 leaks per year. This is despite the fact we know that water will be one of the greatest challenges the city will face in the future. Our housing list stands at 152,000 people with a need for 300,000 city-produced housing opportunities. Incidentally, the 18 billion rands of fraud and corruption under investigation would have been enough to build houses for all our people on the housing list. The unofficial backlog, including those in the missing middle of the housing market, is much larger. It can be seen in the legacy of backyard dwellings, landlessness, illegal land occupation, and frustration in our communities. Possibly the most staggering backlog of all are in the finances. In 2012, the city took a decision to invest 100 billion rands in capital expenditure over 10 years. You may remember this from the many billboards, radio adverts, and full-page newspaper spreads. This entire plan was premised on the idea that the city would improve its revenue collection and generate with cash-backed surpluses that would be matched by national treasury. Needless to say, neither of these two assumptions materialized. Rather than backtracking on all that marketing, the city began borrowing from future revenue that had not been materialized. Upon stepping into office, we were settled with debt in the region of 17 billion rands, 5 billion of which was due this year. It was perhaps this particular inheritance which was the most challenging of all, limiting our ability to address the service delivery backlogs which confronted us. The plans of this multi-party government have to be aligned to overcoming these enormous backlogs in order to grow our economy, create jobs, provide quality services to all our residents. Fellow councillors, I stand before you today to tell you of the kind of change that has taken root in our city. While the city's infrastructure has been allowed to decay over many years, with less than 2% spent on repairs and maintenance, I'm pleased to inform our residents that repairs and maintenance spent now stand at over 6%. The job of keeping our infrastructure working will require a delicate balance between repairs, maintenance, and refurbishment. This is a monumental task viewed against the background of historic failure. Our road network has been a priority of this government, knowing what the network means to the people and businesses of our city. Since coming into office, the city has repaired 181 potholes across the city and resurfaced 520 kilometers of our roads. This represents the greatest achievement in this field of work compared to any other similar period. As part of our no-join policy implemented last year, 120 traffic signal intersections have been dug up and recabled to reduce their downtime, arising from rain and electrical storms. We can report that the implementation of this policy at 120 of the busiest traffic intersections has reduced traffic light downtime by 72%. It is critical that we expand this project in order to improve the investment along our road networks and experience of our users. The reliable provision of electricity is a critical task faced by our government. To combat this, we have overseen the complete refurbishment of 39 substations. We have also conducted repairs and maintenance on 37 of our transformers. Fellow councillors, we have witnessed the ugly future of water shortages in our country through the drought that has hit some parts of South Africa. The truth is, Johannesburg will not be able to fight off drought with the state of our water network. To make this point, in the 2016-17 financial year, real losses of water amounted to 107 billion litres of water lost through our dilapidated water network. While the responsibility for water supply is that of national government, we as a city must start preparing for water-constrained future. We need to begin investing in technology that help us save water. More than this, we need to begin changing how we all support the responsible use of our water-scarce resources. In this financial year, Johannesburg Water has succeeded in refurbishing 37 kilometers of the city's water pipes. In those communities, the taps will no longer run dry. Ladies and gentlemen, we have identified 5 clinics as priorities to introduce drug rehabilitation services to our communities. In February this year, the first was opened at the Tladi Clinic in Soweto. Mr. Gumbe from Jabulani, Soweto, who is here with us today, had the following to say, and I want to quote from him. I'm grateful to the City of Johannesburg for opening the Tladi Substance Abuse Treatment Center. I took the son of a neighbor to the center. The young man was using drugs and terrorizing his mother. But since he started attending sessions at the center, there is progress. I am grateful to the City of Joburg for having listened to our cries. The Tladi Center is a blessing from God. We are now able to assist and refer our children who are being swallowed by these drugs to the center. We are grateful. Close quote. Mr. Gumbi, to you, sir, I want to tell you that your words steer us to greater heights in combating this horrendous trade. Within the coming weeks and days, similar facilities will open in Westbury, River Park, Joburg Park, and El Dorado Park. These communities will form part of a growing number of residents who will receive this critical life-saving care from our government. In my last State of the City address, I told you about the Maziko family. This family lived in a small 2-room shed without water supply. The oldest daughter contracted tuberculosis and suffered from at least 2 fits every single day. During my interaction with the residents in the community, a number of people told me of family members, neighbors, and friends who had contracted a similar illness. From my predecessor's budget for international travel, which I had little intention of using, we were able to extend the Princess Clinic's operating hours late into the night, over weekends, and on public holidays. Today, I'm pleased to tell you that we have extended operating hours at a total of 13 clinics in our city, offering after-hours healthcare to the communities of Zandspruit, Doornkop, Protea North, Dobsonville Gardens, Sloverville, Mansfield, Terfontein, Doornfontein, to name a few. We have recorded over 87,000 patients' visits at this clinic during the extended hours, and a resulting decline in the waiting times during ordinary hours of operation. During these extended hours of operation, these clinics have dealt with 178 emergency cases, which involved life-threatening conditions that otherwise untreated could have resulted in patients losing their lives. In a message, Innocentia Dlepu, who is here with us today from Freedom Park, said if it was not for the Freedom Park clinic operating until late, her 7-month-old daughter might not be with us today. She says, and I quote, "We rushed her to the clinic. It was late in the day, and the nurses at the clinic stabilized my child and called an ambulance. She was later admitted at Baragwanath Hospital. If it was not for the help of the clinic, I do not know what would have happened that night." Close quote. Mrs. Lepu, it is stories such as yours, ma'am, which will continue to inspire this government to bring this critical service to more communities in our city. We have also extended the operating hours of 11 libraries in our city so that more people can have access to a safe place to learn, study, read, or prepare to enter the job market. Fellow councillors, the job of stimulating economic growth of our city is the most critical task of this government. Ultimately, it is when people gain meaningful employment that they will be able to improve their lives. This will allow government to focus on those who need our support the most. The best intervention that we can achieve is to raise investor and business confidence in our city. Johannesburg has always been the economic engine of our country, despite national government having failed to achieve the basic conditions that inspire confidence. Businesses must receive a stable supply of services. The road network must be improved. The rule of law must prevail. And Johannesburg must be an attractive place to set up business. It is our efforts in the small business sector which inspires hope. We have thrown out the previous SMME hubs, which were disastrous. They provided little value. Services were outsourced, and nobody seemed to concern that businesses did not grow and employ more people. They were used as box-ticking exercise. With this, we have launched the new opportunity centers, opening the first in Marshall Street here in the inner city. The remainder will be launched in the coming days and weeks. These centers will focus on a basket of services that will achieve the real empowerment of small businesses. This includes registering companies on the city's suppliers database and training to improve the ability of these SMMEs to tender for the city's project. This initiative has been supported by SARS, CIPC, SAICA, CEDA, the Innovation Hub, and a number of private sector partners, offering a full-scale suite of services to incubate small businesses and access funding for them. Since the launch of the First Opportunity Center, we have been overwhelmed by offers of support from the major private sector companies to take this initiative to new heights. I remember my personal experience in 1994, when I expected to witness an explosion of black entrepreneurs in our country. Those entrepreneurs who had weathered the oppressive restriction of apartheid government should have flourished under the free government of our country. But this did not happen. Instead, the entrepreneurial spirit was killed by oppressive red tape and a business culture of patronage and dependency. Our new opportunity centers will house the city's soon-to-be-launched work seekers database. This will effectively replace the so-called Josie at work and do away with middlemen and determining access to these opportunities. The database will serve as a resource where qualifying persons can register to benefit from temporary work opportunities in the city on a fair and rotational basis. The city will begin registering thousands of work seekers on our work seekers database. For the first time, they will begin to receive opportunities previously reserved for the politically connected few. Arising from this database will be the beginning of a massive artisan training program. We have an aging generation of bricklayers, electricians, and plumbers in our city and country who are reaching retirement age. As a country, we have failed to train young people and provide them with these critical skills. Shortly, in Johannesburg, 300 youth will begin artisan training provided by the city of Johannesburg. This is the start of a much bigger project that will see thousands of youth trained, gaining the requisite certification and experience in partnership with the private sector. By so doing, we ensure that our youth have access to opportunities that allow them not only access job market, but to meaningfully advance it through it as well. This said, the core role of government is actually ensuring that an enabling environment exists for businesses and entrepreneurs to thrive in the city. To this end, we must progressively work to cut red tape, which prevents the expansion of businesses and subsequently job growth. Over the past year, we have progressively reduced turnaround times for land use and development applications in order to promote industrial development across our city. Indeed, in the past financial year, we achieved the processes of 95% of submitted building plans within 30 to 60 days. This is as a result of a city's commitment to service delivery turnaround times, which affects not only residential, but also commercial and industrial developments. Ladies and gentlemen, the sense of growing change is indeed evidence in facilitated investment, which continues to be made in the city of Johannesburg. At this mid-year point, 5.6 billion rands of external investment has been injected into our city, which has already exceeded the annual target and the achievement of any full prior year in our city's history. This is an indication of the business sector's growing confidence in the city's future prospects. Although this is still much work to be done, these are encouraging signs indeed. Fellow councillors, Johannesburg carries the worst scars of the apartheid era special planning. The poorest of our residents continue to live on the fringes, far away from economic opportunities in the city. With a special mismatch between communities and jobs, studies reveal that most South Africans spend up to 70% of their limited household income on food and transport. This is not to mention the lost time which people could have put to better use at work, leisure, or with their families. It is clear that the situation needs the strongest action. Firstly, we must diversify existing townships to include more job opportunities and amenities. Secondly, we must direct the provision of new housing to areas closer to jobs, schooling, and public transit hubs. While government has a number of tools for affordable housing provision, we believe that government cannot address these problems alone. We, like many cities across the world, believe that the private sector has a role to play in the provision of affordable accommodation for our people. This role stems not only from social responsibility, but also from the huge value that municipalities provide to developers in terms of land use rights and bulk infrastructure. Some of this value must be returned to the residents of the city. One way of addressing this crisis is to rid ourselves of the mistaken belief that there's no good business to be done in the affordable or low-cost rental housing market. What better way can there be to socially responsible business than to offer affordable housing to people who really need it? The luxury property markets, although hugely rewarding, cannot solve the problems that faces us here in the city of Johannesburg. This is especially so when one considers that in Johannesburg, 50% of our households earn less than 3,500 rands a month. There is also preliminary evidence that the new build housing market is already evolving to incorporate lower income housing options. As demand for luxury housing slows, the vast market for affordable housing has come into play. In this context, the City of Johannesburg, through its Development Planning and Housing Department, is set to introduce an inclusionary housing policy with a draft policy currently out for public comment. The draft policy proposes that every new development of 10 dwelling units or more must include 20% inclusionary housing for our people. I am all too aware of the fact that for us to stand a chance of providing dignified housing for our residents, we must strike a balance between our objective and incentivizing businesses to buy into our plan. Our vision is that inclusionary housing, when managed privately, should cater for households with an income of 7,000 or less per month. Ultimately, we must ask ourselves, irrespective of our views on how to do business, what kind of city do we want? Do you want to further entrench apartheid spatial planning, or do we want an inclusive city whose development will foster economic and racial integration? The people of Johannesburg want an inclusive city that no longer reflects the painful memory of a segregated past. Ladies and gentlemen, the city of Johannesburg inner city is full of potential. Its 500 derelict buildings have the potential to provide low-quality housing opportunities for many people who form the missing middle of the housing market. It holds the potential to be a space for small businesses and startups unable to afford the rentals of the Rosebanks and centers of our city. Whenever I think of the inner city and its potential, I'm reminded of my own upbringing. My own mother worked as a domestic worker, as all of you are aware. My father passed away when I was only 2 years old. My brother, 3 sisters, and I were forced to fend for ourselves because we live far away from work opportunities my mother could access. She spent most of her wages traveling over weekends to see us, and we survived on very little. It is families like this to whom I dedicate the plans of the inner city, to give them hope of a life beyond a backyard shack and 3 taxis to seek work. Late last year, we began the process of releasing derelict city-owned buildings for the purpose of developing quality low-cost accommodation for our residents. I'm pleased to report to you that 12 properties have already been released and developers are coming down forward with proposals that meet these expectations, while another 71 will be released soon. I ask you to join me in imagining the transformation of our inner city when construction begins on these 83 buildings. We are also engaged with the private property owners of derelict buildings so that those buildings can also form part of our plan to turn the inner city into a construction site. Home ownership is not just about putting a roof over one's head. It is the affirmation of human dignity and the hope that government working to steadily undo the injustices of the past. I'm happy to announce that since taking over office, we have delivered 5,145 title deeds to the residents of Johannesburg. Giving over 5,200 of our poorest residents the dignity of home ownership. This is compared to the past, where the city did not deliver a single title deed in the 2012-2013 financial year. A disgrace. To date, the city has also constructed 1,089 new RDP homes, which represent new housing opportunities to be provided to our residents. A further 1,000 homes await only electrification to be completed. Fellow councillors, during the last State of the City address, I spoke of the need for us to build a city where our residents could safely work and walk our streets at night. A city where criminals lived in fear, not our law-abiding residents. To that end, I'm pleased to report that we have completed the recruitment of 1,500 additional GMPD officers. These recruits are currently undergoing training so that they may join the fight to keep our communities safe. They are led and well led by our new Chief of Police, Mr. David Tembe, who is already proving to be an excellent leader in our law enforcement operation. Thank you so much, Chief Tembe. You're a great public servant. In fact, GMPD has effected over 20,000 arrests since the multi-party government came into office. It is worth noting that this is more arrests than were achieved between the years 2009 and 2012 combined.
Sit down, sit down.
I will not shy away from the fact that we have arrested 577 people in connection with hijacked properties, including undocumented immigrants who must then be processed by the Department of Home Affairs. I will not apologize for this, and nor will our efforts subside, because the rule of law must prevail in our city. Many people from across the continent and world seek a better life in South Africa, and Johannesburg in particular. The reality of our city is that many of undocumented immigrants are forced to live in the fringes of our society with limited protection afforded to them. From the city's perspective, illegal immigration compounds serious challenges, not only for the provision of accommodation, but also for the provision of other basic services as well. We will not turn a blind eye in the hopes that the problem will magically disappear. It is therefore crucial that a comprehensive plan be developed which will finally start addressing these pressing concerns. That is why we have engaged the Department of Home Affairs to demand that something is done in the city of Johannesburg. You will be surprised to know that in a city such as ours, Home Affairs does not even have a single refugee center. People who come to our city seeking asylum in accordance with our laws have to go to Mosina, Marabastad in Pretoria, or Durban to access asylum applications. The time to act on this pressing crisis is now, and not a moment later. Ladies and gentlemen, when taking over office, I was struck by the utter lawlessness that had been allowed to take root in our city. Criminal syndicates had been allowed to cover up the city for their own notorious ends, terrorizing our residents. It was in response to this that we launched Operation Buyamteto, Bring Back the Rule of Law. This project led to the formation of a multidisciplinary law enforcement unit that conducts raids throughout the city, addressing the violations of our bylaws, environmental health and building codes, and the illegal consumptions of our services. The project's success has been commendable, and we are beginning to see the kind of crackdown on lawlessness in our city that has been demanded by our residents. Of particular note are the efforts to identify those businesses which are consuming services through illegal connections, amassing historical debt without ever paying. These days and those days are now gone in the city of Johannesburg. In its few months, Operation Buyamteto has brought in a total of 341 million rands. These businesses will now be built every month, bringing recurring income for our city. We will continue to shift the pressure of our law-abiding citizens and placing that pressure on these businesses who are shamelessly stealing water and electricity from our people in our city. Fellow councillors, the K9 Narcotics Unit, which we launched at the end of 2016, continues to grow from strength to strength. To date, the unit has achieved 1,193 arrests, recovering 123 illegal firearms, 136 kilograms of drugs, and over 1,000 hijacked vehicles. The work of this unit has to focus on the major dealers and distributors of drugs in our city, because we can never succeed by waging war against the small-time dealers and users. It will continue to be our focus of this government that Johannesburg becomes a city too dangerous for criminals to operate in. Ladies and gentlemen, the work which is starting to take root in our informal settlement has made me proud to serve as part of this multi-party government. We must acknowledge there's still too much to be done. However, I'm excited by what we have planned to achieve for our residents whose dignity is compromised on a daily basis because of their living conditions. To date, we have converted over 50 kilometers of gravel roads in informal settlements to tarred roads. The communities that have benefited from this include Kalfontein, Maibuye, Dorenkop, Tulane, Slovovel, Tsepisong, Drezik, Boyke, Diepslot, Loli, and Protea South.
Maka.
In the adjustment budget passed in February,
Councillors. Mr. Mayor, please continue. Thank you. You'll have your chance on Friday. Thank you. Please continue, Mr.
But
Mayor.
on a serious note, this man is lying.
In the adjustment budget passed in February, an additional 62 million rands was allocated to expand this work, and I'm looking forward to further results. Our efforts to electrify informal settlements have meant that 5,083 more households will no longer rely on dangerous illegal connections and will now have their children studying under a light bulb for the first time. These residents have now witnessed this change brought to them by this multi-party government, bringing hope and dignity to their lives. In this respect, I would like to share a story which shows the kind of dignity we have started to deliver in our city. In 2015, the residents of Slovo Park took the city to court for its failure to provide services to them after what was then 21 years of democracy. I now read from the court judgment, open quote. They have been residing in Slovo Park for a period of up to 21 years. For all of this time, they have lived in deplorable conditions. They have no access to electricity. Shack fires break out at the rate of 1 every 2 months and are often fatal, and ambulances refuse to collect the sick from Slovo Park because the roads are not formally demarcated or do not appear on the map, are not signposted, and as a result, individual residents cannot be located. Close quote. The judgment goes on to refer how this community had been promised by all three spheres of government to provide services, but these promises never materialized. These, to me, were the forgotten people of our city. I'm pleased to report that this council, that on the 19th of February this year, the residents of Slovo Park, for the first time, awoke to the sounds of the city installing electricity and roads in their community.
Thanks to EFF Motion, Mayor. Let's not forget.
Councillor Novella, please stop using the mic without my permission. No, you can't do that. And you are repeating it, please.
To address the safety issues in our informal settlements, public lighting has been installed in Glasparade Extension 6, Protea South, Messi Park, South Hill, Calfontaine Extension 10, Blue Hills, Meriting, Portview, and Swartkopis. Joburg Water has achieved the rollout of water provision in informal settlements that will result in 2,500 households receiving tapped water for the first time. The city now has 55,000 VIP toilets in informal settlements and 5,266 chemical toilets being serviced on average twice per week. By no means, this is a perfect situation. This is only an interim solution to a pressing human crisis. More work needs to be done in this area in order to deliver permanent solutions which fully promote the dignity of our people. Despite the success of such stories, our cold reality is that informal settlements are growing on a daily basis, reflecting the painful legacy of landlessness in our country. Along with this growth is the increasing number of people who will require intervention to bring dignity to them in the future. I recall a meeting a young woman during one of my visits to Alexander during the election campaign. This lady took our delegation to a sheikh, and we noticed that he had no ablution facilities whatsoever. I recall asking her how she survived without a toilet, and her answer will never leave me. She responded by saying that over many years, she had trained her body to only require a toilet while she was at the place of work. If there was ever a story that illustrated the need for us to do more to provide the dignity of sanitation in our informal settlement, it is this story. And it's unfortunate that some people can laugh at this tragedy. Ladies and gentlemen, the launch of Arisebetseng in 2017 was a milestone for our city. In my travels around the world, one place that impressed me most was Kigali in Rwanda.
But thanks to EFF.
The streets of Kigali are spotless and people have much pride in their environment. This is because every month the entire country of Rwanda comes to a standstill to volunteer their time in the Umuganda Day to make the country cleaner and better. Following their example, we launched Arisebetseng, which in Sesotho means let us work. On a monthly basis, people across our city, they've come out and volunteered their time alongside government to clean its spaces around in which they live. Without fail, every month, I've been deeply moved by the spirit of our people. I'm also moved by the spirit of corporate Johannesburg, who have joined this campaign, including the likes of Coca-Cola, Anglo Gold Ashanti, Adcock Ingram, Avis Fleet, and many others. We have partnered with South Africa, with our universities, with places of worship, ratepayers associations, community organizations, and the international community. Since its inception in 2017, 11,022 events have taken place across our city, collecting an incredible 245,000 tons of waste. Going forward, I'm pleased to announce the diversification of Arisebetseng into further areas of voluntarism that will take place simultaneously with our cleaning campaign. Arisebetseng schools will see communities working alongside government in adopting schools. In these monthly operations, we will work together to improve the learning environment for some of our poorest schools. We will be establishing teams of educators who are willing to give their time to help students in need. It is through Arisebetseng that we will continue to unite people in our city by a common cause of voluntarism in a spirit of community shared between all people. In my last State of the City address, following engagement with the EFF, we announced the insourcing of security personnel. At the time, the city had in the region of just over 4,000 security personnel operating under 108 contracts to various city departments. Each security guard, please listen carefully. You remember that word, listen carefully. A security guard cost the city in the region of 14,000 rands per month, payable to security companies citywide to the tune of over 600 million per annum. Listen carefully again. The sheer truth is that a security guard worked, please listen carefully, earning as little as 4,100 per month. What a tragedy. Today, I'm pleased to report to you that we have advertised the 4,000 vacancies and verified the applicants who were eligible to benefit from this arrangement on the basis that they were employed at the time of the announcement. Already, I'm pleased to announce that on the 1st of June, the first Insourcing security personnel will arrive in the city to begin work with a decent pay and benefits, taking home a minimum of 6,500 rands per month.
Viva EFF, viva.
Viva EFF, viva. EFF.
This insourcing process could easily be argued as one of the largest and most complex undertaken by local authority in this country. Earlier this year, I was also alerted to the plight of the former so-called Josie at Work contract workers who had operated in Pikita for years. What struck me most was an grossly unfair that these contract workers were doing the very same work for 2,200 rands per month without any benefits as full-time employers of Pikita. Once again, and listen to this, middlemen were used to recruit these workers. This was the abuse of the worst kind of the veil of this so-called Josie at Work. To address this, 1,400 workers will go home from receiving, listen again, 2,200 a month with no benefits. Under the so-called Josie at Work program, they will be earning just over 6,000 rands per month, including full benefits.
Viva EFF, viva.
And receiving the dignity of work they deserve. Our efforts to insource catering services have also progressed.
Viva ANC, viva.
These individuals will provide catering services to the city on a full-time basis and will provide the services at a lower cost than the city has traditionally paid. In each and every one of these cases, the city has been able to run a process that does not increase its cost for these services, while meaningfully provides the dignity of a fair pay and benefits to those who have been mistreated in the past. By the next State of the City address, we will be conveying what has been achieved in the insourcing of our cleaning services, which has to be our next priority. I would like to express my appreciation to the EFF for their engagement with us on these matters.
This idea of here.
This speaks to how we can work together, locating common ground between us to achieve what is right and improve the lives of our people. Fellow councillors, we continue to wage war against corruption in our city. The latest statistics reflect that we have over 3,500 cases at various stages of investigation involving a staggering 18 billion rands in fraud and corruption and maladministration. The staggering loss of public money against the massive backlog of services in our city is unforgivable. To date, I'm pleased to report that over 709 people have been arrested since the establishment of our group forensics unit, of which 38 cases are currently before the courts. An internal recoveries unit is being established to ensure that the city can begin the process of pursuing perpetrators and culprits to recover these public funds. We can then ensure that these public funds are retained to improve service delivery in our communities, the places from which these public funds were stolen. We are on the brink of closing the investigation on a company called MTC, Metropolitan Trading Company. In 2010, and please listen to this and listen carefully, the city commissioned the build, operate, and transfer of broadband network throughout the city. It was a massive project that would have brought benefits to our city. After just 4 years of the 12-year BOT contract, the city decided to buy back the broadband network, despite having no expertise or capacity to manage it. The price of this decision, you may ask, and listen carefully, 2.3 billion rands. The city went to the extent of setting up a municipal-owned entity, MTC, in an attempt to justify this decision. But, as usual, what lay behind the decision was insidious corruption characterized by benefiting the Qaeda network. A series of companies benefited through this buyout deal. And a simple search of these companies revealed no less than 2 national ministers listed as directors. These 2 ministers will be named in due course because this report is expected to be finalized in the near future. A concerted and coordinated effort was made to destroy documents and evidence, but we will get to the bottom of this case, and nothing will stop the truth from coming out. From the massive to the absurd, I present to you the case of a company called Secure Engineering. The company appointed to build the substations in El Dorado Park and Hopefield to deal with constant electricity outages in the area. This company submitted a forged bank guarantee to secure the tender and proceeded to receive over 100 million rands for the work estimated to the value of no less than 1.5 million rands. While the people of these communities continue to suffer from an unreliable supply of free electricity. I'm pleased to report to Council that the 2 directors of this company have been arrested, are out on bail, and will return to the courts on the 5th of June this year to answer for their crimes against our people. Our efforts to hunt down corruption in our city have been labeled witch hunt, and I'm accused of being uncaring in my approach. Hear it from me, and hear it from me now, and hear it from me again. We will not be deterred. We will not slow down. In fact, we will accelerate. Our fight against corruption will never rest in this city. I would like to applaud the majority of this council for supporting, supporting the fight against corruption in the city. To those in council who do not yet support this fight, who labeled this a witch hunt, the invitation to join this fight remains open. The true fight against corruption is no compromise, no fence-sitting, and no middle ground. It requires a clear commitment to ensuring that public money is understood to be exactly that. It is public money and entrusted to our care. My commitment to achieve a professional public service remains a cornerstone in our effort to turn around the city of Johannesburg. Nothing we do will be more important than this, because the accumulative effort of having 33,000 employees committed to a common cause, which is our people, will exceed all other interventions we can possibly achieve. In this respect, the skill audit has been concluded for levels 1 and 2 in the city, with recommendations arising that we must implement to upskill our senior managers. The audit is commencing for level 3 and 4 with a view to being completed by the financial year end. Our Service with Pride campaign continues to identify officials in our city who go beyond the call of duty for our residents. Every week, we champion those who serve our city and serve them with pride. I'll give you an example of Inspector Rikotso of JMPD, who is here with us in the gallery today. Inspector Rikotso, if I may ask you to please stand, if she is around. Thank you. One of our residents was on a way to OR.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
Councillor Mfikwe, you called me. I don't know why. Okay. Thank you. Please continue, Mr. Mayor.
Mara Speaker. Awa.
One of our residents was on a way to Artambo in a taxi where the driver was being aggressive and refusing her to get out and find another taxi. An off-duty officer at Kotso observed something was wrong and helped the resident out of the taxi. The resident was shaken and worried sick that she would not make it to the airport in time. So the off-duty officer at Kotso drove her to the airport herself. This is the kind of service which goes beyond the call of duty. And I ask to join me, and I'm asking you to join me in celebrating the proud service offered by Inspector Rikoso here today. Ma'am, thank you very much. As we proceed with our plans for the 2018-2019, they will be coupled with an extensive series of engagement with employees of our city. The plans for delivering the kind of change demanded of our government must be shared by every person working in our city, whether they wear a suit or an overall to work. In the process of informing the strategy for the 2018-19 financial year, I've come to the conclusion that this city has these priorities wrong for a very long time. Somewhere along the way, the city leadership became obsessed with self-pleasing ideas of the world-class African city. This was to impress international bodies, but the problem was that our predecessors bought into their own spin. So the operation of the city were engineered to include programs and projects that really belong to a city, which already has the basics right. The focus became about active lifestyle programs more than what about providing dignity and sanitation to our people. Spending on sports and recreation received 10 times more than the effort to combat the deadly trade of drugs that held so many young people down. More was done for swimming pools than was done for the potholes or street lights. Essentially, the approach of the city seemed to be about meeting the expectations of the countless international bodies on which it served, rather than delivering what people actually needed. Soon, the budget was being spread too thinly across many areas of interventions. Government became too preoccupied deciding what people and communities and business needed, instead of actually listening to them directly. Our people want city to focus on the basics of local government, the bread and butter issues that impact their lives on a daily basis. They want a city that builds houses, opportunities to address the painful legacy of dispossession of land and title deeds in our country. For those who have services, they want reliable provision of electricity, water, sewer, and refuse removal. They want to drive on roads that do not damage their vehicles and through interactions where the traffic lights work. They want to live in a city where more is done to keep their families safe and where criminals find the city a dangerous place to work. They want a growing economy that creates jobs for our people. They want a city that provides for the needs of its residents with quality primary health care that takes care of the weak and the weary. They want to be treated with respect and dignity. In considering the plans of the multi-party government, I'm reminded that the residents in our city voted for change in 2016. What must drive the work of our government is defining the change alongside budgeting, planning, and sufficiently to achieve it. It must start with the realization that change that the majority of our people had in mind was not small change. It was not about fiddling here and tweaking there. The change that was demanded by the multi-party government was real change. It was fundamental change. There's a word in Sesotho which captures this notion beautifully, called diphetogo. Diphetogo can only directly be interpreted to mean real change, transformational change. It captures the idea that change is not an event, but a process. That is why diphetogo speaks to a defining end state, ensuring that long-term planning and investment follows to achieve it. It was at this point that our planning for the 2018-19 financial year end became known as the diphetogo program. The first job was about listening to our residents to define the areas where this change must be prioritized over the long to medium term to achieve this diphetogo. Our residents and businesses who currently have access to water, electricity and refuse removal must enjoy reliable provision of the services. Service outages must be reduced notably to the point that the current state of affairs becomes a distant memory of a painful past. Our residents who do not yet enjoy the dignity of the services will see the city doing more than it has ever done before. The services are a basic requirement of local government and will no longer be rolled out as though government is doing these residents a favor. Our road users on our 13,500 kilometers of road network must experience better roads, fewer potholes, and clear road markings. Roads must be dug up and relaid where they've been allowed to decline to the point where pothole repair is futile. Our 1,000 kilometers of gravel road, of which exist in our informal settlements, must start to disappear. It is relatively a small matter, but an important one to say that our policy will not be change street names in the city unless they are historically offensive. But our approach will be to ensure that our residents living in informal settlements have the dignity that comes from a touch street with a name and an address. Our residents must see more houses being done in the housing space than has ever been done before. We have to invest in all housing typologies to address the historical legacy of our painful past and provide the dignity that comes with our own ownership and title. Our approach is to reverse this backlog and not just making small incremental inroads into it. We must diversify housing beyond the RDP tradition and look to site and service, formalizing informal settlements with services, and the potential the inner city holds for massive low-cost affordable housing. Our residents must experience street lights being installed and maintained across the city in a way which makes our streets less desirable for criminals. We must make Johannesburg shine bright at night and assist the work done by GMPD must keep our communities safe. Visible policing must increase in our city, with more on-duty officers in more vehicles being seen and felt. By law enforcement must be aided by the newly established municipal courts to ensure that our offenders are made to answer to the law. Intelligent policing initiatives must see massive rollout of CCTV camera networks being monitored in our operation centers. And the use of gunshot fire technology must augment our police force in responding to crime scenes faster. Our residents must find more of our clinics and libraries operating with extended working hours. Those in need of primary health care must receive it easier, later, and over weekends. Those in need of safe, conducive environment to study must find our libraries open to their needs. In response to a motion by the EFF in Council, our efforts in primary health care will receive a boost by initiating a procurement of mobile health care clinics. These vehicles will take primary health care to those areas and most in need while the rollout of clinic continues throughout our city. The continued rollout of drug treatment and rehabilitation centers in our clinics must also expand. There can be no doubt that not enough has been done by provincial national government to combat drugs in our city, and requires us to step up and do more. The historical debate of this being a national or provincial competency cannot continue while our young people are dying from this scourge. Many of the people who I've spoken of are major drivers of economic confidence, growth, and job creation. But we have a direct role to play as a city. In this respect, our newly revamped opportunity centers must expand into more areas, supporting more small businesses with a greater basket of services. We will not, as before, seek to create winners and losers in the space, but we will support the small businesses that have weathered the failure of government to support them over the last 2 decades. We will expand artisan training programs in which thousands of young people can then learn the trade of bricklaying, plumbing, tiling, and electrical services. We will roll out Wi-Fi throughout the city, focusing on areas which will drive economic growth. Studies worldwide have indicated that for every 10% rollout of access to Wi-Fi, a city can achieve a corresponding 1% growth in its economy. This is one of the departments that will receive investment that exceeds anything before. Arising from the valued input of Councillor J. Maharaj of Cope, the city will now begin pilot project for the provision of free bus rides for pensioners and persons with disabilities during off-peak times. This pilot project will allow the city to make the necessary preparation for a full rollout of this initiative in the future. Our residents must experience improvements in our customer care. Waiting times and queues must be shortened, and our residents must receive the red carpet treatment, which was the exclusive preserve of political leadership in the past. While we are working to address our long-term backlog in our city, our residents must be treated as partners, not as adversaries in our customer care. Our efforts in this debate of priorities speak to the need to invest in our infrastructure, our communities, and our economy. It requires of us to do more. We must be better. We must deliver faster than the city has ever done before. In this respect, I've used my delegated powers to initiate an establishment of a service delivery unit in the office of the city manager. This unit's purpose will be to plan, monitor, and manage the rollout of these priorities in our city. It will operate as a monitoring and evaluation tool to make sure that these projects are rolled out efficiently and effectively. Having identified the areas of priority, we had to deal with the question of the quantum of change envisaged in these projects. The mandate for change we received in 2016 was not for small incremental changes. It was for real changes, fundamental changes. Given the state of the city we have inherited and the financial constraints arising from this, it requires that we begin to take the bold decisions needed to achieve change. Change cannot be achieved if we do what has been done before. We must invest heavily to ensure that change is realized in this term of office. In our situation, this kind of change will only be realized by focusing our attention on priorities. When the basics of local governance have been neglected, trade-offs need to be made. These basics of local government will never be achieved unless the trade-offs are made. Should the only working electrical outlet in a community really be the pump of a new swimming pool? I do not believe anyone would advocate this. Can we really justify building multipurpose centers and community halls to service communities that do not have the dignity of a toilet? No community I've engaged with would choose a community hall instead of seeing their children studying in their homes under bulb light. How can we justify priorities, precinct beautification programs, when our infrastructure is crumbling in ways that threaten the economy of our city? The over 1 billion rands that was historically spent on street art, swimming pools and recreation centers need to be redirected to get the basics in our city.
Mara, you're clipping.
Through this kind of reprioritization, we can ensure that our limited financial resources are channeled in a manner where the priorities of our people will receive more long-term investment than ever before. Ladies and gentlemen, the milestone we have reached and this administration, the programs of change which the city continues to embark on, do not belong to one party alone. It is a program of change and delivery forged from the contributions brought to the table by each of the coalition partners who make up this government. What we have achieved so far is testament to the change that we can deliver when we work together for the benefit of all our residents, transcending party politics and the limits of each of our individual party manifestos. When the people of Johannesburg voted this administration into power, they spoke with a clear and unambiguous voice. They want to see bold steps taken to move Johannesburg forward into an era of change. Please allow me, I would like to take this opportunity to thank our coalition partners for their continued service to the people of Johannesburg. My deepest appreciations goes to Councillor Mzumbanzi Ntuli, MMC for Housing. MMC for Transport, Helen Makuba. Both of these colleagues are from the IFP. Thank you very much for serving the residents. Equally, my appreciation goes to Councillor Meshach van Wyk of the ACDP, Chairperson of Community Development. Thank you, sir. Councillor Thandi Nontenja of the UDM, Chairperson of MPEC, Councillor Franco Dilange of the Freedom Fund Plus, Chairperson of Economic Development, Councillor J. Maharaj of COPE, Chairperson of OCOL. I thank each of you for yours and your party's unwavering support in setting this multi-party government's agenda. Although not a coalition partner, I wish to express my thanks to the EFF, led in Johannesburg by Councillor Musa Novella.
While he catches the feelings, so.
Please allow me to actually thank Councillor Novella for the honest and robust engagement with our administration. Together, we all understand the residents of our city required each one of us to put aside things that makes us different from one another in the interest of what we all have in common. I'm grateful to each of you for your willingness to come to the party. Allow me to take this opportunity to recognize the presence here today of the provincial leadership of our coalition partners. From the IFP, the Honorable Bonginkosi Dlamini. From COPE, the Honorable Lefo Honong. From the ACDP, the Honorable Lydia Meshwe. In his absence, the Honorable Jacob Mulder from the Freedom Front Plus. And also in his absence, Mluleki Franz from the UDM. Again, though not a member of the coalition, I recognize and appreciate the presence of Honorable Mandisa Mashego from the EFF. I would also like to appreciate the presence here today of Honorable Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi, leader of the IFP. You honor us with your presence. I would also like to recognize the national chairperson of the EFF, Advocate Darlin Pofu, who is here with us today. Advocate, thank you very much. You grace us with your presence. Thank you so much. I would also like to thank the Honorable Musia Lekota for joining us here today.
Sell out, sell out.
It is a great
It's a sell out.
It is a great privilege for which
It's a sell out, that one.
And I thank you, sir. I thank all of you for your commitment and your support for change in our city. Let me also take this opportunity to recognize and appreciate the presence of leaders of my own party, DA Gauteng leadership, Mr. John Moody.
Where's Tilile? Tilile.
Johannesburg Regional Chairperson, Dr. Hendrik Volmenk. Deputy Chair of Federal Council, Thomas Walters. And DA National Spokesperson, Refilo Nzeke.
Please.
I thank you all for your unwavering support. Ladies and gentlemen, today we recommit ourselves to delivering change to the people of Johannesburg. The change of which I speak of is fundamental change. Total change that will impact the lives of our people in the most meaningful ways. We have started a journey on the 23rd of August 2016, and now, just 21 months later, our city is moving in the right direction. It has to be the focus of our government to ensure that the pace of change increases and that it reaches into the lives of more people, more businesses, and more families.
You forgot the ANC.
Despite the mammoth task ahead of us, we continue to grow.
Councillor Danja, will you stop including Councillor Ntombela?
We continue to draw strength and inspiration from the enduring spirit of our people of our city. They have endured many years of hardships and neglect, while their most important needs took a backseat in the work of government. It is the spirit of our people that will continue to inspire our government. It is the strength of our people that must drive us to higher levels of achievement. It is the suffering of our people that must guide us to be more caring and more responsive. It is the patience of our people in the work of turning the city around, which must forge partnerships between government and communities in achieving change. It is our people that must remain in the center of every effort of our government, because if this is true, surely the change cannot fail in the city of Johannesburg, and I'd like to thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
You ANC. Thank you, ANC.
Viva!
Ja, die kleinen...
Thank you, councillors. Will you please take your seats? Councillors, thank you. Please take your seats. Councillor Shabalala. Thank you, councillors. Before we close, some announcements, and councillors, thank you. There are some announcements. Just for the arrangements will be announced from the table, and that will be done by Linus. Sherlin, will you please make those announcements? Thank you. On the seating, I mean the exit arrangements.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Councillor Vasco da Gama. We are going to all rise up when the Speaker leaves by Marcel out of the, and then Franz is going to usher the Executive Mayor. Agri will usher the Chief Whip of Council together with the Chair of Chairs. Octavia is going to usher the leader of the official opposition party together with the Chief Whip. And then they will be followed by the MMCs, and then our chairpersons. All MMCs and chairpersons and office bearers will go for media briefing on the 16th floor, A block. All the guests will either choose to go to the reception room or the marquee. Lunch will be served at the reception room or the marquee. All guests and the rest of the other councillors. Can we leave in that order, councillors? As councillors leave the chamber, I request all the guests to remain seated. They will be ushered. Thank you.
Thank you. Just the final announcements. Councillors. Councillors, will you please take your seats?
Baby girl.
Thank you.
Baby girl.
Councillors, just to close, the rebuttal this coming Friday, and the meeting will start as usual at 10 o'clock. Please ensure that you come earlier than 10 o'clock for the rebuttal, in other words, a debate on the state of the city this coming Friday. Thank you very much.
Keep on